Alright, first of all, apologies for the abrupt ending of the last list. I was not aware that my camera battery died because I was taking too long. So, we're just going to jump right into the next season. As a whole, Season 5, not the best, not the worst. We've done 4 lists of the same show, so we already know the deal. Ranking every episode of the season from worst to best. Let's get into it. Our next stop, the top 24 My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 5 episodes. Number 24, Princess Spike. I think everybody knows my absolute hatred for this episode, and for the longest time, I considered it to be the worst episode of the entire show. After the huge amounts of character development in Season 4 that Spike got from Power Ponies, Inspiration and Manifestation, and Equestria games, I was starting to come around on Spike a little bit. Then this episode came out, and then it made me think, yeah, never mind, I hate him again. This episode, yeah, I even said this in the review, that I need to ask, because a lot of reviewers give this episode a pass. So, just to reiterate, when the mysterious Mayor Duel, Spike at your service, and Rainbow Falls does a character 180, everybody calls out on the writers and says that they fucked up. But when Princess Spike do it, yeah, no, who cares? I legitimately hated Spike in this episode. It did start up with good intentions of wanting to take over for Twilight's princess roles, leaving aside the incredibly unlikable and inconsiderate side characters, and also fuck you for a big fuck you to the episode for making the only likable Canterlot citizen fancy pants into an episode, so fuck you for that, Princess Spike. And the absolute slap in the face by the moral, Spike does not learn his lesson, by the way. I legitimately hated Spike in this episode the moment he did the lock, shock, and barrel thing when he did the cross the arms behind his back. It got to the point where I literally wanted to strangle the kid. This episode was that abysmal. I feel like to the people who give this episode a pass, I feel like I need to sit them down in the chair, tie them the fuck up, make them watch the episode over and over and over again until they assign it the rating it deserves. So yeah, Princess Spike is not only the worst episode of Season 5, but one of the worst episodes of the entire show. So, it's not an average episode, it's a piece of shit! Alright, moving on. Number 23, Party Pooped. This was the episode that was the introduction to the Yaks. And I hated the Yaks with every fiber of my being. The first act was insufferable, hearing the acts throwing a hissy fit when the ponies were trying to make Ponyville more accustomed to Yak-Yakistan. While Pinky's journey was interesting, and the secret of her secret party planning cave, which literally made Princess Spike so much worse by comparison, the fact that the journey led into all for nothing, I literally could care less by the end of what happened, because the acts were that so insufferable, and how the ponies were desperately trying to impress these inconsiderate assholes. The only reason why this episode is still better than Princess Spike was that Pinky's journey to Yak-Yakistan was interesting, even though it ultimately amounted to nothing, and the reveal of Pinkie Pie's secret party planning cave were literally the only things I liked about the episode. But other than that, it is still garbage, but still better than Princess Spike. Number 22, What About Discord? This is another episode like It's About Time, where I've only seen it once, but I never saw it until I reviewed the episode. And unlike It's About Time, where one can make an argument for it, this episode gives me nothing to work with. The humor that the main six basically interacted with Discord, I had no idea what the jokes were, and the payoff really was nothing to write home about. It really overall was basically just a nothing episode for me. There was nothing to talk about, nothing memorable. It overall really was just a nothing episode. So that's really all I could say. But I'd rather have a nothing episode than an insufferable episode. Number 21, Flame Shields Up, Brotherhood Social. Yeah, I know there are people that like the episode, but I didn't like it. I understand Big Mac's intention, and while some can find the whole Big Mac and drag thing to be funny, I found it to be desperate and selfish, and I could not get I can get behind Big Mac's result of wanting to get closer to Apple Bloom, but not the motive. I didn't laugh at a lot of the jokes in the episode, and I really just found myself wanting to hit the fast forward button so we can get the stupid reveal trope by the end. And honestly, I really could care less. This is another episode that I really just did not like and could not get into, and I do not understand why these people think it is a good episode. It's still better than the last three because at least it gave me something to talk about, but yeah, I can't get behind this episode. I'm sorry, I just can't. Number 20, Appaloosa's Most Wanted, a.k.a. what would happen if everybody in Appaloosa were all the adults in Appaloosa were taken over by the adults of South Park, where every single adult character was an incompetent moron. Oh my god, I hated everybody in that episode so much, except for Troubleshoes and the Cutie Mark Crusaders and Troubleshoes' backstory. And about 10 minutes of that to see Troubleshoes get into the actual rodeo show and then finding out the purpose of his cutie mark, that definitely made it interesting. However, what put this episode at the bottom 5 is that literally every single adult pony in Appaloosa, Applejack, Sheriff Silverstar, and Braybird were all incompetent morons, and basically he considered, oh, Troubleshoes caused destruction, he's a witch! Like I said, the only Troubleshoes' backstory and him finding the talent of his cutie mark, and the fact that the Cutie Mark Crusaders do face consequences for sneaking out, which is a lot more better than Some Point to Watch Over Me, does make this episode slightly better than the other 4 episodes of the bottom 5, but yeah, still not a very good episode. Number 19, Castle Sweet Castle. Obviously, this episode has to address basically the destruction of the Golden Oak Library, and that scene is still a powerful scene when you go back to watch it again, and the payoff, basically, of seeing Twilight's friends get jewels and memories from their time in the Golden Oak Library is definitely a sight to behold. The journey of getting there with the main 6 trying to make Twilight's castle more home is kind of a bit dreary. It honestly gets really dull how they try to make it all about themselves and not what Twilight wants. Honestly, you kind of expected where it's going to lead, and it is incredibly dreary and boring to get to. But the third act does help this episode pick up a bit, so that's why I do think that it's better than the other episodes. But I really want to consider it one of my favorites of the season. Number 18, Made in Manhattan. This is one of the first episodes. This is one of the first episodes on this list where the main 6 are basically called out by the cutie map, the first season that introduces it, to go out to lands in Equestria, the 6 friendship problems, and Rarity and Applejack are basically into Manhattan to essentially put on a play to essentially recapture the spirit of Manhattan theater. And that is literally all I remember from this episode, because other than that, I can't even remember what the essential conflict was. But I do like how both Applejack and Rarity try to bounce off each other in Manhattan, and also trying to help resolve the problem. But that's my problem, and the reason why this episode is so low is that the episode is extremely forgettable. The moral is forgettable, the jokes are forgettable. I literally cannot think of a single thing from this episode at the top of my head, even after I watch it. But as I said, I would rather have a forgettable episode than an insufferable episode. Number 17, Heartbreakers. Basically, another Christmas episode where we see the apples and the pies kind of living together to celebrate Heartswarming Eve. I do like how we do get to see what the tradition sides of the 2 separate families are. And this was obviously around the time where I started to warm up to Maud's sense of humor, and we got to see the rest of Pinky's family, and how they're really just as dreary as it seems. And Marble Pie is kind of adorable, while Limestone is essentially Remy from Black Lagoon. And that's about it. I really don't like how Applejack basically tries to push her views on Heartwarming Eve onto the Pie family and kind of making it more insufferable, and the fact that all the other apples have to suffer the consequences for it, and that they're kicked out of the family initially. I really couldn't care for that at all. But I do like how the families do essentially warm up to their own traditions, and they do end up living together for Heartwarming Eve, and I really do like that aspect. And I did like the interactions between all the different siblings, with Granny Smith interacting with Pinky's parents, Big Mac interacting with Marble Pie, even though, well, you know, as I said in the review, it might come off as a bit Norman Bates, Korekio Senguji vibes in very, you know what. And even Apple Bloom interacting with Maude and her being able to understand her the first time seeing her more than the main six were able to in their debut episode. So it made it a good episode overall, but there's just some things about it I really don't like. Number 16, Canterlot Boutique. I really liked how Rarity was able to try to expand herself out of Ponyville and open up her new shop. And I do like how basically they kind of use the euphemism, if you end up doing the same thing over and over again, i.e. making the same dress over and over again, you'll end up losing your creativity, and essentially, well, you end up losing your passion to do, well, anything. And I really like how when Rarity put her hoof down with Sassy Saddle when enough is enough, because by this point, Sassy was basically trying to turn into a dictatorship, and pretty much it was turning into slave labor by this point, but since Rarity was basically only one pony making the princess dress, and then Sassy tried to make it all about herself, it's like, are you freaking serious? But I do like how Sassy does own up to this mistake, and she does end up apologizing, and Rarity does see the positives in Sassy, which is why Sassy ended up sticking around. So I like the idea, but once Sassy tried to take over the Canterlot Boutique and seeing Rarity being so miserable, it basically made it all the more heart-wrenching to watch. But I think it's still a good episode. Number 15, Bloom and Gloom. Basically, a.k.a. it's Apple Bloom's turn to interact with Princess Luna, as she basically gets nightmares and fears of what she would be like if she does end up getting her cutie mark and all the possible scenarios and thinking that her family would be abandoning her. Basically, having in the Cutie Mark Crusaders be afraid of their future, of what could happen when they earn their Cutie Mark, I think is definitely an interesting idea that I kind of wish that the show would expand upon more, because even though they're still trying to get their Cutie Marks, they don't know what's going to happen when they do end up getting them. I do like how it's Princess Luna who does this with Apple Bloom this time around, considering that she already had her moments with Scootaloo and Sleepless in Ponyville in Season 3, and with Sweetie Belle, for whom Sweetie Belle told, and basically tells Apple Bloom, well, it's natural for the others to feel the same way. So I do like that aspect, but this episode doesn't really take the top 10, because I think that at this point the dream sequences start to get really exaggerated, and at times, especially the Apple interrogation dream sequences, a little uncomfortable to watch, which is the only reason why this episode barely cracks the top 15. Number 14, Rarity Investigates. Honestly, the positives I like about this episode are obviously the mystery aspect of it. Just fitting the noir-style mystery of what happened to Spitfire, and Rarity basically pulling on the noir, her persona, and actually being a good investigator and putting all the clues together. It felt like in either an LA Noir case or a Danganronpa case, it was that engaging. And I did like how Rainbow Dash was able to learn from Rarity about why she did all this, and learn the true values of the Wonderbolts. This episode doesn't crack the top 10 for two major reasons. Number 1, the Wonderbolts are complete and total assholes. The fact that they instantly believe Wind Rider and not listen to Rainbow Dash's pleas, and just immediately go out of their way saying, if you can't find the truth, we're kicking you out. Under whose fucking authority? Until they finally back her up and don't give her an apology. And number 2, Wind Rider. The major problem with the mystery was that it was not much of a mystery, and as I said in the review, if Rarity got the right culprit but had the wrong motive, it could have been something interesting, but no, Wind Rider was an asshole because he wanted to cheat and preserve his record. The only reason why I am not more hating on Wind Rider is because it gave me fan fiction ideas. Yes, for a fan fiction that I've been working on for basically since my senior year of high school in December of 2015. So it gave me a lot of potential, and the mystery is really not that good. But I still like the episode, but the payoff is really not that satisfying. Number 13, the Hooffields and the McCulls. I know a lot of people might think it's not a very good episode, but I kind of like the feud between the Hooffields and the McCulls. Yeah, it's basically the stereotypes that are out via South Park and the over-exaggeration of the country folks fighting over with what they need, and they don't really know what they're fighting for. But I do like the history of Mount Ares and why Twilight and Fluttershy are the ones able to go out there, where Twilight tries to be the logical pony, but she can't really seem to get through to them, but Fluttershy was able to learn the truth through the animals, who were essentially caught in the crossfire. Here. And I did get a lot of laughs, I gotta admit. I just can't help but like the episode. I think this is one of those episodes that I just like, but everybody else hates. And I think it's an underrated episode. Number 12, make new friends but keep discord. Basically, this is what happens when you have a jealousy story where Discord basically gets jealous of Fluttershy having a new BFF in Treehugger and really doesn't get her. Edit. And I really do like to see the return of the Grand Galloping Gala, though that kind of raises the question why the ponies would even bother going back to the Grand Galloping Gala if Princess Celestia said back in the Best Night Ever that the Grand Galloping Gala is always awful, so I don't understand why they would want to go back there. But the humor in the episode I really enjoy. With Discord stand-up comedy, a lot of the references were really great. With the introduction of the Smooth, the scene out of The Shining, and Discord threatening Treehugger to go into the puppeted dimension from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, I found to be humorous. But I also really liked how Fluttershy put her hoof down with Discord and basically telling him to back off and to not let his jealousy override his friendship. And I think that's something that needs to be considerate, especially when you're trying to have friends with somebody with the opposite gender and they're being best friends with somebody that, you get the idea. Number 11, the Scare Master. Alright, so this is yet another episode that I like but everybody else seems to hate, because I think what people tend to forget is that Fluttershy, while she has gotten over her fear of the darkness, she hasn't gotten over her fear of Nightmare Night, and that she acknowledges that she is taking baby steps. And that's what I like about the episodes, that they acknowledge that she's taking baby steps, but the thing is, she hasn't gotten over her fear of Nightmare Night because it was never addressed. And I do like that Fluttershy does try to come out of her shell, even if the attempts were really not that favorable. But the payoff of seeing Flutter coming back and having all of her animal friends help scare her, only for her to realize that, well, she doesn't want to do something that she's not comfortable with. Now, obviously, the main reason, 3 major reasons why this episode doesn't crack the top 10 is because the moral, at best, is very situational, because you are going to get stuck something doing that you're not comfortable with, and you have no other options. So the moral is very situational. Fluttershy gets very over-exaggerated of literally everything in terms of Nightmare Night, and obviously the ever-so cringy tea party scene that I really love. And another reason is that Rainbow Dash was a dick in this episode. And essentially I wanted to make a drinking game where basically you take a shot every single time you say Rainbow Dash is being a dick in this episode. And those are 3 really huge main contributing factors of the episode. I still like it, but I can understand why there are people who don't like it, and it's those 3 reasons why this episode doesn't crack the top 10. Number 10, do princesses dream of magic sheep? Yes, I get it. I know that the whole allegory for suicide may not be the best handled, but I didn't really see it that way. I do appreciate the fact we get to see more of the dream sequences and how creative the dream sequences through Princess Luna, and how she tries to atone through her allies with the Tantibus, how she tries to atone for her actions. And all the dream sequences we see are very creative, and we see why they're so connecting, and it basically just reminds me of the dream world in The Nightmare on Elm Street. I understand this episode gets hate, but I didn't dive too deeply on it. I think this is another episode like Rainbow Falls where, like, if you just turn your brain off and not think about it too much, you can get enjoyment out of it, because you're just so engulfed by the creativity that goes on in this world, and you want to see Princess Luna come out on top, and I think it handles it well. So, I do like the episode. Number 9, The Lost Treasure of Griffinstone. The return of Gilda, and obviously her reappearance was a lot better than her appearance in Griffin the Brush-Off, because we got to know more about her character, and also the introduction to the land of Griffinstone, and that it was not just Gilda, but all Griffins are essentially grouches. And the action was also very exciting, and also being able to see Rainbow Dash and Gilda reconnect on their friendship and to show why they ended up becoming friends in the first place was definitely a sight to behold. And it honestly goes to show that Griffins could learn friendship, which we would soon get, 3 seasons later. It is just overall a solid episode. Number 8, Thanks for the Memories. Basically, the episode that's basically the kids' version of showing the 5 stages of grief. I do like how Rainbow Dash goes through all the stages of grief because she doesn't want to let go of Tank. Also, I'll Fly, probably one of my favorite songs of the show because it reminds me a lot of Defying Gravity from Wicked, just based off of the tonal and the lyrics. Just seeing her desperately wanting to see Tank basically be together with her because she's now become so close with Tank that she doesn't want him to leave, but when the reality comes in that Tank has to hibernate, that bedroom scene is such a gut-wrencher, until Pinky kind of ruins it with the Applejack joke, but I definitely got the whole... But like I said, the episode basically goes through the 5 stages of grief, and I think it's kind of a way for kids to understand those 5 stages, and I think they will understand it, and I think it is a solid episode. Number 7, The Cutie Map, aka for the longest time, the scariest episode of the show. Because basically Starlight Glimmer being the head of an unnamed village that basically was under a communism dictatorship rules of having the same cutie mark, and then taking away the main 6's cutie marks, which inspired tons and tons of nightmare-fueled fan art where things got absolutely scary, until part 2 came out where we basically found out that Starlight as a villain was a massive hypocrite. I do like how the main 6 essentially are basically pushed up against a wall so hard where they have their doubts and suspicions of what's going on after hearing rumors from other townsfolk, but it's ultimately the side characters that end up saving them, and unlike the other season premieres outside of Princess Twilight Sparkle, the villain isn't defeated. Starlight ends up getting away, and we knew that she's going to be coming back. So I really do like how the season premiere kind of kicks everything off, and it basically kicks off what could be a potential good payoff. Number 6, the one where Pinkie Pie knows. Without a doubt, the funniest episode of the season. Seriously, it is a comedy gold mine, this episode is. Pinkie trying to keep a secret that Shining Armor and kids actually got all, and are having a baby, and Pinkie trying so hard to keep it a secret, but can't help but try to reveal it. She does everything in her power, just her inflections and how she does everything she can to try to hold the secret back. Like I said, the episode is a comedy gold mine, and her reaction when it's finally revealed to Twilight and the rest, it is just an absolute joy. There's really nothing bad I can say about this episode. It's just relatively a funny as hell episode. It's probably one of the best Pinkie Pie episodes I've seen in a while. Number 5, the main attraction. Okay, let's get the elephant out of the room. Yes, I still think that to this day, Sven Gallop is a rotten scumbag piece of shit, and that he deserves to get more consequences than just a slap on the wrist, because everybody just lets him go, and he gets away with all the shit that he pulls in the episode. That still aggravates me. But aside from the one character, this episode definitely goes to show, gives us more of Applejack's lifestyles. We get to see his relationship with Countess Coloratura, and both of her songs, by the way, are also very, very good. And actually seeing Sven Gallop get exposed is so satisfying. And we see Ra basically rediscover her love for music. I think what makes this episode also so great is that this was also the last episode that Amy Keating Rogers wrote before she left the show. So she wanted to go out on a high note. And honestly, I think for the most part, they were able to pull it off, as it was basically a very grim reality of what it's like in the music industry, since as I said in the review, most people in the music industry are horrible people. And that's the sad truth nearly a decade or two later. But other than that one rotten scumbag piece of shit pony who has not reappeared aside from a couple of cameos I found out, the episode is still relatively solid, even if you basically have to sit through the most insufferable one-off character of the show. That finally made me realize, that basically got me to say, alright, thanks to this guy, I am never giving Spike shit ever again. Alright, number 4, Slice of Life. The show's 100th episode, I really love this episode. While there isn't much of a story structure, it gives more of a shout out to all the side characters. There was a lot of jokes and meta humor that the showrunners were made aware of by the fandom, and I really like how they tried to hone in on all of it and why the background ponies basically make Ponyville so lively, and I really do appreciate it. It's a simple story of basically seeing Cranky and Matilda get married, but seeing all the side characters interact with each other, while it did drag at times, it was still a ball of fun, and I couldn't help but enjoy it. It was just overall a great 100th episode. Number 3, the Cutie Remark. Okay, yes, the time travel shenanigans, I am not one to comprehend it because, as DBZ Abridged pointed, multiverse theory is a bitch, and it's going to take me forever to try to explain it. I did like how high stakes this finale was, with not only Starlight coming back, though I kind of wish that she didn't pull a whole dark side from Countdown, of basically sitting in the castle room just waiting for Twilight to reappear, but it's because of these time travel shenanigans that it's Twilight and Spike that have to do everything on their own, and I did like how the other world timelines were like, and what could have been if the Sonic Rainboom that Rainbow Dash formed never happened. Now, like I said, this finale does continue to make Starlight look like a massive hypocrite as a villain, and yes, I will admit, her turning over a new leaf after Twilight convinces Starlight not to rip up the spell and basically cause the space-time continuum to have an aneurysm that I'm wondering if Time Force probably would have to fix it for everything for its worth. Now, yes, I, like many in the fandom at the time, was not comfortable with Starlight becoming a new reformed hero after all the shit she pulled both in the premiere and the finale, but obviously, unlike most people, I was able to get past that, and it got my fanfiction writing juices going, and what started me to write my first fanfiction, that, as I said, I am still writing to this day, but I am so close to finishing. I think it's a really underrated finale, but the time travel shenanigans and the lack of understanding and the heel turn of Starlight in the last act, yeah, it's not the best, but I still like it. Number 2, Amending Fences. Probably the most relatable episode when you feel like that you've disconnected from yourself from your old friend, and seeing Twilight trying to reconnect with all of her old friends, but feels like that she crushed Moon Dancer, who was the one friend that she hurt the most. And obviously, without a doubt, the party scene at the end of the episode is one of the most realistic scenes that is not only gut-wrenching to watch, and it breaks my heart, but it is one of the most identifiable moments I've seen from the show. Because as somebody who has a hard time trying to stay in touch with his friends from both college and high school, and when you try to put yourself out there, and when one of your friends doesn't appreciate it, it absolutely breaks my heart. But to seeing Moon Dancer being able to be surrounded by ponies that do care about her, not just from Twilight, and also trying to get her to interact with her new friends in Pinky, I think it is a very solid episode, and I think it's something that kids, rather young teens, I think is something that should be watched by, that essentially you can still reach out to your old friends, and when you put yourself out there, you know you have friends who will always count on you. Some people might say the episode's overrated, but quite frankly, they kind of need to chill out on certain aspects and focus on more other episodes that deserve hatred. And the number 1 best episode of Friendship is Magic Season 5 is... It's no surprise, it's Crusaders of the Lost Mark. The episode where the Cutie Mark Crusaders finally earned their cutie marks. That was just an added bonus. The episode itself finally addresses all the bullying that Diamond Tiara basically had to put the Cutie Mark Crusaders and most of Ponyville through for the first 4 seasons. Seeing Silver Spoon tell her off was satisfying, but then finding out that Diamond Tiara has a bit of a bitch of a mother that basically forced her to say a lot of these things. But we also get to see that the Cutie Mark Crusaders try to help Diamond Tiara find the true purpose of her cutie marks, even though she put a whole quinceañera together. And the songs in this episode, much like Pinkie Pride and Magical Mystery Cure, the songs in the episode help keep the story moving forward, and you really feel the gradual growth of Diamond Tiara basically learning more about the Cutie Mark Crusaders and starting to admire them more, and we see more of her time of her redemption. And to see her tell her off to her mother is absolutely so satisfying. And as I said, the best part of the episode, the extra bonus of it all, was that the Cutie Mark Crusaders, after 5 seasons, finally got their cutie marks. This episode was just a touch of perfection. Just the build-up, the performance, the humor, and the ultimate payoff of the episode is so solid that it is a god-tier episode, and there's really nothing bad I can say about this episode. And on top of that, it did basically shifted my expectations based off of the description of the episode I saw on DirecTV's description, but I'm so glad I was wrong, because this is so phenomenal. So without a doubt, Crusaders of the Lost Mark is the best episode of Season 5. So as a whole, I think Season 5 is, as a whole, middle of the road. Not the best season, but not the worst. I think much like Season 3, it has some episodes that I like but everybody else seems to hate, but it also has episodes that I truly, truly hate, which is why it bogs it down for me a bit. But still a solid season overall, but it has some really, really awful episodes. Alright, we're now about almost 2/3 the way through this. So next time, we are going to be counting down all the episodes from worst to best of Season 6. I'll see you guys next time.